After leaving the underground camp area and realizing that the portal was still in the sky, the party took a few moments to gather their thoughts and prepare for the journey back to the military camp to speak with Torin about the portal. Zeos expressed that he wasn't sure that this was a ruin from the First Age. Mavis asked what Zeos would have expected from a true ruin from the First Age, and Zeos shared that he was mainly going off of the knowledge he had learned from the Arcanium, the largest magic school in Ador, that also happens to house the largest library in Ador, located in the city of Rand. Mavis was quite unimpressed at the ruins as a whole, but nevertheless, the group began heading back into the forest toward the military camp to the south. As the group emerged from the forest, they noticed that the portal was no longer in the sky, and in its place was the beginnings of a storm that was rapidly growing. Due to Gar's time on the sea, he could tell that the storm didn't seem natural and suggested that the party quicken their pace. As the party neared the military camp, the storm grew in intensity, and they began to see soldiers that were retreating from the camp. One of the soldiers recognized the party, and as he approached, the party recognized him as Stanley, the scout that led them to the ruins. Stanley shouted through the downpour of the storm, informing the party that the portal still remained active and was now on the ground, and that Torin was the only one still back at the camp, attempting to close it. The party made haste to the portal site. As they crested over a hill, they saw the military camp in ruin. The walls laid collapsed on the ground, the tents laid in rubble, and in the center of the camp stood Torin, about 20 feet away from the dark portal, channeling a beam of energy from his staff into the portal, attempting to close it. Upon noticing the party approach, Torin quickly asked if there was any way they could help. Zeos was the first to approach, standing next to Torin and placing a hand on his shoulder, as he channeled the innate magic in his veins to help. All of the tattoos on Zeos' body began to glow, as magic channeled into Torin, funneling through his staff and helping to form a sphere around the portal. May approached next, and standing next to Torin, she held her holy symbol and channeled divine energy into Torin, as red cords of divine energy wrapped around the portal, bearing resemblance to the red cord on May's holy symbol. Gar approached and continually channeled sacred flames from above as the rain began to form together into waves that created a column of divine power above the portal as it came crashing down on top of the portal. As Mavis approached, the party began to notice that they could see through the portal to the other side, an endless desert of maroon red sand, a sight that most of the party knew all too well. Mavis fired a perfectly timed bomb from his cannon that exploded at its epicenter, seeming to cause the portal to truly start to destabilize. Finally, Laren approached, and not knowing what else to do, she threw a dagger from her belt straight into the portal, and as she did, she noticed a green glowing symbol on her right wrist that looked like two leaves crossing over each other. With the combined efforts of the party, Torin delivered a final surge of energy to close the portal, for good. The battlefield grew quiet, and as the party caught their breath, they began to truly notice the damage that had been caused. Many lives were lost during this portal's destruction, that now laid on the grounds of the military camp. Torin began to ask the party of their ventures in the ruins. As the party informed Torin of what happened, they described the vision of the high spires of rock and a man telling them to find him. Though this didn't ring any bells with Torin, he did remark that the party could probably find what they were looking for in the city of Harmony. Torin invited the party to join him in his journey back to Harmony, which he would depart on within the next couple days. As the party finished their conversation with Torin, they noticed Commander Aethys emerging over a hill, along with many members of the Kalcheth militia. As the soldiers surveyed the battlefield, they began to gather the dead to prepare a proper burial. Aethys approached and asked how the portal was closed, to which Torin responded that the party was instrumental in their assistance of closing the portal. Aethys formally apologized to the party for his intense distrust of them, and thanked them for everything they've done to help, a noticeable difference in his attitude toward the party from before. Mavis asked Zeos about his tattoos and what purpose they serve. Zeos shared that his tattoos serve as an arcane focus, channeling his connection to the weave. Mavis assumed that this explained the source of Zeos' magic, but Zeos explained that he could cast magic before he got his tattoos, stating that he could create snowballs from nothing even as a kid, and that the tattoos simply amplify what is already there. The two went back and forth debating the existence of magic in general, and though Mavis continued to doubt its true form, he seemed to begin to acknowledge its existence to an extent, only enough to state that he would get to the bottom of it. Laren and May had a short conversation about the aftermath of battle and the experience of loss. Both Laren and May seemed to be able to relate to loss, though they didn't go into specifics. Zeos asked Laren about the symbol that appeared on her wrist, and contemplated the possibility that Laren may be connected to Druidic ancestry in some way, though Laren didn't seem to be aware of any Druidic connection. Gar took some time to intentionally cast gentle repose on some of the corpses without the aid of his holy symbol, to show to Mavis that his connection to the divine is not dependent on it, but rather on his connection to Melora. Gar decided to give his holy symbol to Mavis in an attempt to allow him to spend some time with it and maybe find the answers to some of his questions. Torin stated that the city of Kalcheth was apparently having a celebration after the events of the portal, and the group decided that it was time to head into the city. Along the way, May spoke with Zeos about the cube that the group found, wondering if it was divine in nature. The group concluded that the best way to determine the origin of an object is by symbols on it, or its effect, or its creator, which are ambiguous for this particular item for the time being. Zeos did note that the Identify spell might be able to help, though none of the group knows how to cast it. Gar asked Zeos about his tattoos as well, and if they hold any meaning, in particular recalling seeing a symbol for Bahamut on Zeos' body during the closing of the portal. Zeos responded that some of them are arbitrary, but that the symbol for Bahamut was not religious for him in nature, but rather homage to whatever connection he has to dragons, evidenced by the scaly nature of Zeos' skin. As the group approached Kalcheth, they began passing through farmland outside of the city, and they noticed a cemetery off to the side, and an area next to the cemetery that contained several small stones with names inscribed on them. One of the commoners, a young woman, explained that the stones are a way to remember those that have been lost in someone's past, as a way to commemorate them. Upon entering the city, Zeos spotted a human in fancy attire that held himself very proper and had a symbol on his clothing of one of the royal families of Ador, 2 hands in the process of a handshake, the symbol for the Galaman family. The human introduced himself as Killian Galaman, stating that he had arrived after hearing of a dark portal on the land. Killian carried himself in a very noble manner, and yet had a warm air about him. During the conversation, Killian learned of the group's contribution in closing the portal, and thanked them for their efforts. Killian explained that the Galamans are known as the Folk family, and gave the party a brief lesson of the 3 other royal families, the Highstocks, the Gritfords, and the Linzors. He explained that the 4 royal families, along with 4 other representatives, form the Circle of 8, the ruling council in Rento, capital of Ador. Mavis took some time to visit with a smith, purchasing some raw steel, stone, and granite from him. Mavis asked the smithy if he had heard of boom powder, which the smithy thought was possibly a drug, though ultimately simply stating that he didn't carry it. Zeos and Killian made their way toward a drinking game, while Mavis visited a general goods store for a broom. Gar and Laren made their way to a local milk stand instead of alcohol, and May spent some time outside with the stones next to the cemetery, trying to comfort anyone that came by. Gar used a restrained form of his frost breath to chill the milk for a group of children that were waiting in line, to which all of the children cheered and gratefully accepted the milk. During their time at the milk stand, Gar noticed that Laren was no longer next to him. Laren made her way down a few alleys away from the party, eventually finding an open door amidst rows of closed doors, with the open door emitting a subtle orange light from inside. As Laren entered the building, several candles illuminated the small room inside, and she noticed a symbol on the ground, but couldn't quite place where she'd seen it before. As she was trying to remember, the door behind her slowly closed, as she heard a voice say, "Don't scream. It wouldn't help you anyway." As her blood grew cold, and she realized that Athenor now stood before her, the 2 of them alone in this building. Athenor explained how the group had become a nuisance for him that he would deal with eventually, but that Laren might be of some use to him. He explained that the rest of the group was quite difficult to get information on, or were simply unuseful for his purposes, but that Laren was surprisingly easy to get information on. Laren seemed quite ready to leave at a moment's notice, as Athenor explained that he needed her to retrieve an item for him, and leaned in close to whisper something to her. And as he pulled away, with a defeated look on her face, Laren asked what the item was that Athenor needed.